Back with former Miami Beach mayor serving 2 terms, PhilipLevine, running for the gubernatorial nomination in a crowded field of Democrats. We'll talk about that in a moment. As we're on this side of the break, I did want to bring up recreational marijuana. John Morgan, the Orlando attorney, who pushed successfully for medical marijuana, wants to eventually and is pushing to get that back on the ballot. Do you support recreational marijuana use in Florida?
The answer to that is highly regulated, absolutely yes. But more importantly than just that, we decriminalized it on Miami Beach a few years ago because it was the right thing to do. We don't want to lock people up. We don't want to ruin their lives, going to college, going to the armed services, have great jobs ahead of them. There's no reason. I believe that we should regulate it, we should tax it, and we should stop locking folks up indiscriminately and disproportionately, African Americans, for marijuana. It's something very serious, and the amount of revenue that our state will be able to achieve, I think, is in the neighborhood of $500 million to $600 million a year.
How do you cement relations with law enforcement? I talk to many all the time casually when I'm out and about. They feel that they're under a siege. One recently told me, he said, even somebody in my family doesn't appreciate what I'm doing. And a lot of them are asking the next governor, how are they going to be there for us? It's a contentious, tough topic when there are many community relations issues. You dealt with those on Miami Beach with your department and talked about tough reform efforts after a high-profile incident, body cams, much more. But talk about that issue, because it's about working with law enforcement, but also with communities that feel disenfranchised and that they don't have a relationship with their police department or don't trust them in many of the communities.
Michael,
African-American communities particularly.
I agree with you, and I think that our law enforcement is a very challenging position today, and my God, we need to respect them and honor them, and we need to help them make their job as best as possible. My experience in Miami Beach, of course, is I inherited a police department, unfortunately, where the tail was wagging the dog, where an African-American male during Memorial Day weekend was shot multiple times in his car. And I said, if I'm honored to be mayor, I will reform the department. I did it. New chief, new deputy chief, new majors. We put cameras on our police.
Different kind of training?
Absolutely. We brought in someone special, and an African-American deputy chief by the name of Loretta Hill, who made history in our police department. So we've done it, but we understand both sides. But clearly, it's all about tolerance, Michael.
In our remaining time, I want to put up a poll, because for a lot of people come August 28th, the fact of the matter is that while there may be some disagreements, the Democratic candidates, I mentioned Mayor Gillum of Tallahassee, Gwen Graham, Jeff Green now in the race, the billionaire developer and real estate mogul, Chris King as well. I think I've got every name in there so far. Said, yeah, there we go. And it said, who would you vote for if the election were held today? Graham, a lot of name recognition. Her dad, of course, former governor and U.S. Senator. 18%, although Jeff Green, very deep pockets, starting to cut in the lead. Other polls suggest that perhaps he's beginning to come next to you in terms of the polling. Gillum as well, Chris King, we don't have him in that poll. So fundamentally, what's different about you when all of you in most respects agree on the issues? So why you?
Michael, I'll tell you why. Because I think I bring the best of both worlds. I'm somebody who started from nothing and built some companies, but then became a successful 2-term mayor. When you put together success in the private sector in combination with the public sector, I think that separates me. But even more importantly than that, Michael, I think what people in this political world are interested in all the time is that they all talk about what they're going to do in the future. But the one thing they always forget to talk about is what they've actually done in the past. And I think that my track record of getting things done speaks for itself.
I want to ask you about a criticism. Those who like you a lot. Those who don't. A Miami Herald poll, or excuse me, a Miami Herald profile, said, but what voters won't hear from Levine, I'm quoting here, is that his tenure as mayor had an underbelly peppered with moments where the 56-year-old then cruise industry entrepreneur displayed a, quote, thin skin, clumsy leadership, and venom for anyone who challenged him. He jump-started more than $1 billion in newly planned legacy projects, but governed impulsively, appointed his business partners to important positions, and burned through supporters and critics alike in pursuit of his ambitions. And I want him to win, said former Mayor Maddie Bauer. But I want to and she said, I want him to win because I want to make sure he stays away from here. A scathing critique.
I'll tell you, politics is very interesting. When you take over a city from a city that was going backwards, if not sideways, where it was plagued with analysis paralysis, where they were hiring consultants to hire consultants, and you have someone who comes in as a hard-driving entrepreneur and says, let me tell you something, I'm not going to do nothing. I'm going to get things done. I'm a very passionate person, and the one thing I realized and I told everybody is, we're going to do exactly what I said we're going to do. As a passionate entrepreneur, Mayor, that's what I'm going to do.
But as a passionate entrepreneur in the private sector, you can push buttons. In Miami Beach, a big city, but compared to the scale of Florida, not so big. And the argument is that you're going to have somebody, if a Democrat were to be elected, who can reach across party lines. And when you hear quotes and hear that even your gubernatorial opponents quietly, quote, call him brash and smug. How do you reach across the aisle with the Republican legislature when people say, frankly, smart guy, hard charger, but really hard to deal with?
Well, you know what I tell them? I tell them I've built companies my whole life, and I've dealt with Republicans and Democrats very successfully. And as the former mayor, we got more done than any mayor in probably the history of Miami Beach. And I think that the people of Florida, what they really want is they want someone to actually do what they say and say what they do, and I'm that guy.
Why, really kind of a pivot off the question I just asked, some will look and say, listen, he's had a very successful career, earned a lot of money, he's wealthy, he doesn't want for money, 2 terms in a vibrant city, a lot of headaches if you should end up in Tallahassee that we just described. At the end of the day, away from your consultants, away from your aides, why? Why bother? You've done a lot, and some would argue you could probably do more outside the political whirlpool.
Well, I'll tell you why. It's probably the question my wife asks me every morning when we wake up, Michael.
And you're heading to the next campaign trail.
But you know why? Because I love the state. The state's been great to me. I created and lived the American dream here. I believe it's going in the wrong direction. I believe that changing our state is the first step to changing our nation. So goes this governor's race this year, so goes the presidency in 2020, and I believe strongly that Florida needs to lead the way. And if not me, then who?
And 2020, whoever sits in the mansion in Tallahassee will have a very big megaphone for the race in 2020. Talk about that.
Well, I think it's going to be pivotal. I've lived it, and I see how important Florida is. Florida is the most important state when it comes to deciding the presidential election. Florida is a purple state, and the way you make purple is you mix red and blue. And I think it's important for us to have a message that is not just a Democrat or Republican message. We need an American message that's good for everybody. Too long we've been divided. As I say everywhere I go, I'm not right, I'm not left, I'm forward. I'm honored to be running as a Democrat, Michael, but before I'm a Democrat, I'm an American. And I don't believe anyone has a monopoly on good ideas.
Former Miami Beach Mayor PhilipLevine running for the Democratic nomination for Florida Governor. We thank you for giving us a few moments as you
so much.
Look at the map and head to the next spot on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, sir. We'll be back in a moment.